Hello everyone, enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
When buying a used car, a young woman found a small note that changed her life. Victoria was a serious girl who, from a young age, dreamed of having a family, and she was fully capable of making that dream come true. She was placed in an orphanage at just 1 year old, and her memories of her family were the most terrible things. Her parents were alcoholics, and the authorities did everything they could to change the situation. They put her parents on their watch list, frequently visiting their home to check on them, but eventually realized that this couple had no intention of changing. So, the authorities decided to revoke their parental rights. Victoria, just 1 year old at the time, was placed in the orphanage. At the age of 5, a kind-hearted woman who lived alone, Ms. Angelica, came to the orphanage and adopted Victoria along with her friend Ivan. From that moment on, Victoria and Ivan were the two children Ms. Angelica loved the most. She sacrificed for and cared for them as if they were her own. Victoria and Ivan grew up together under Ms. Angelica's care, and by the age of 18, they realized that the feelings they had for each other went beyond mere sibling affection. They were, in fact, romantic feelings. They decided that after finishing high school, they would get married and live together. Ms. Angelica approved, thinking that the two would always be by each other's side to protect each other, and she would get to see them close by. They also understood they shouldn't rush such matters and that the first step was to establish themselves in society. After high school graduation, as expected, each of them received a small one-bedroom apartment and a modest allowance to help them live independently. These were gifts Ms. Angelica had saved for all her life to give to her two children. After finishing college, Ivan and Victoria finally decided to marry. The newly formed family moved into Ivan's apartment while Victoria's apartment was rented out, as they didn't have much money. As days went by, their needs began to increase, and they even dreamed of having a child. They dreaded thinking about how much it would cost to raise a baby. After graduating from college, both of them found jobs at the same company. Ivan also worked night shifts as a taxi driver. But all these hardships were bearable when you are young, in love, and dreaming of a happy life with your soulmate until the end of time. That's what Victoria believed. She had a husband, a roof over her head, and once they saved enough money, they could sell this small apartment and buy a bigger one with enough room not just for one child, but for two. She often shared her dreams with her husband, but over time, she noticed Ivan's enthusiasm for her ideas waning. Before long, Ivan started to feel discontented with family life, as he found nothing exciting or special in it. At night, while waiting for customers, he would feel a deep sadness and think about the bleakest thoughts. I'm only 22, almost 23. But what difference does it make? What lies ahead for me? Work, a factory job, and careful budgeting so that maybe I can go out once a month. And what will going out be? Taking Victoria to the movies or grabbing a beer with friends, and that will be my life until I retire. No change whatsoever. It was so foolish of me to marry so early, just for love. I had my own apartment, could bring anyone home, do whatever I wanted. But now what? Victoria with her cooking, or the baby that will come, crying day and night, leaving me no rest or sleep after work. One night, as he was immersed in these sad thoughts, a passenger got into Ivan's cab. When he looked at her, he was taken aback. She was beautiful, attractive, and stylishly dressed. Although her clothes weren't expensive, they were quite fashionable. She also smelled very nice, but for some reason, she seemed sad or worried, just like Ivan. She sat in the front seat without saying a word, gazing blankly out the window in silence. "Where can I take you?" Ivan asked, thinking to himself. "With a woman like this, I'd never feel as lonely as I do now, and she wouldn't feel sad being with me either, or so I think." "Anywhere, it doesn't matter," the girl replied. "Don't worry, just drive straight. I have enough money, tell me when you're tired, and I'll get out." "I won't get tired," Ivan replied, a bit nervously as he started the engine. "Are you okay? Is something wrong?" "Are you a doctor or a priest?" she asked with a sad smile. "Nothing is wrong with me, that's my problem, nothing is happening at all. Do you know any interesting places to see in this city?" Ivan realized that he didn't know of any. He knew the city, the streets, the routes, but he didn't know any interesting spots. "No, I don't know any places," he replied seriously. And then he said, "The only thing that happened to me tonight is meeting you." They were driving down a quiet road, exchanging small talk that gradually led to a conversation. After a while, Ivan learned her name was Stella. She was 26, and she wasn't happy with her life. Although she had everything and couldn't complain about anything, she felt something essential was missing and found no reason worth living for. "I can't believe, Ivan, that you're going through the same thing, as young as you are. I'm 23, and I've achieved the basics: a mother, a wife, and a plan to have a child, a small apartment, a steady job, a side job, and all kinds of responsibilities and obligations. And I have to adjust to this lifestyle because it will last forever. I will never escape it. What do you think, is achieving the basics a good thing?" he asked desperately. "Oh my, poor you, you're so confused," Stella said, stroking his hair, something he didn't expect. "How could your mother let you fall into such a harsh life so young?" "I'm an orphan. I never knew my biological mother, but I have a kind adoptive mother, and I've known Victoria almost my entire life. We were in the orphanage together, were adopted by Ms. Angelica, studied together, worked together, and now live together. She's a good person." "Poor you. But you still have time to change everything if you know how to use it," Stella whispered in his ear. And that's how Ivan's affair began. At first, he kept it a secret, and Victoria, inexperienced, didn't understand why her husband's attitude suddenly changed. She believed every excuse for his frequent absences. When he came home, Ivan would look around the apartment with growing disdain, finding it as old and lonely as its owner. They ate meals prepared clumsily, and he responded to his wife's questions absent-mindedly. Meanwhile, he knew that Stella lived in a rented apartment and worked at a good company. She truly seemed fond of her young lover, and being with her, Ivan felt his dreams finally coming true, and he had no more worries. Stella was exemplary, passionate, and intelligent. Ivan loved her more each day, and the burden of Victoria and their plans for a child gradually became completely meaningless. Stella fully supported him in his thoughts. "Don't worry, Ivan. There's nothing wrong here. Sometimes people divorce. She won't end up on the street, she has her own apartment. She should have thought before deciding to settle down. She could find a mature man with his life together. But instead, she clings to you as if you're her only option." Every day, her reasoning became more convincing. But at this point, Ivan had yet to take action. He thought a lot, but he knew he would tell Victoria they needed to divorce. She would leave the apartment, and then he could live happily there with Stella. But peace didn't stay long with everyone. Ms. Angelica suddenly fell ill. Perhaps the ailments of old age had finally caught up to her. Her body grew tired and frail, her memory significantly worsened, and in just a short time, she had changed completely. She could no longer walk on her own, didn't recognize anyone, and often screamed and acted out. Victoria and Ivan were terrified, taking their mother to various hospitals in an attempt to help her, but all efforts were in vain. The doctors said her illness was due to age and was incurable. They would just have to accept living with it. The doctor advised. Now, what Ms. Angelica needs most is devoted children. Be patient and tolerant when she acts out, take her on walks often, and become her psychological support. And so time passed. Victoria loved Ms. Angelica deeply. She devoted herself to caring for her mother and set aside plans for a child. Meanwhile, Ivan felt his life growing threefold in boredom and exhaustion. One day, Ivan went to a store for elderly care items with Stella. She helped him pick out essentials like adult diapers, clothes, blankets, and bedding. "Now no one can say you don't care for your mother," Stella said as she helped him gather everything. Soon, you'll help your wife move everything to another apartment, and then we can start living together and turn this place into a cozy home. This apartment isn't bad at all, but its owner isn't very creative. Everything is bland and simple. I found some elegant curtains at the store, along with other things. Your life is going to change completely soon. It's already changed so much I barely recognize it anymore. But with you here, any house will feel special, Ivan replied, jokingly. Ivan's cold demeanor and lack of affection for a long time made Victoria gradually understand what was going on. But with so much work and being occupied with caring for Ms. Angelica, she didn't want to deal with it. Then one day, when she saw her husband come home, she realized her life was about to change, and not in a good way. The man held a pink bag in his hand indifferently, without even looking at Ms. Angelica, his foster mother. Ivan had brought a beautiful woman home with him, and she sat down on the couch shamelessly. "Who is this?" Victoria asked Ivan, who didn't answer, calmly taking a sip of water. "Did you get everything for Mom?" Victoria continued. "Diapers, clothes, milk, medicine, all the basics, I've bought and prepared everything. As for the stroller, you can go buy it yourself." "Go ahead, Ivan, don't hold back any longer," Stella shamelessly encouraged him. "Yes, Victoria, I've decided that we need to get a divorce. This is Stella, from now on, I'll be living here with her." "Actually, I've already been living with her," Ivan said. "What do you mean, you've been living with her?" Victoria sat down on the couch, completely bewildered. "You're joking, right, Ivan?" "There's no joke here. People get divorced sometimes, it's not that rare. Now, we'll go to your apartment, from now on, you'll live there with Mom," Ivan replied, indifferent. "But that place is rented out, you know that," she reminded him. "Then you'll ask them to leave. It's not that hard. While you're caring for Mom, you'll get assistance from the state. I'll help if I can. Don't make a big deal out of it, it's really not necessary. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "This isn't the right way to do this," Victoria said in confusion. "I'm doing this for your sake, Victoria, you should understand that," Stella stood up and said. "Come on, call a taxi, don't waste time. You need to rest and take care of your mother, and Ivan and I need some privacy. We'll help you take everything. Don't worry." Victoria sighed and said. "Call a taxi. I see the decision's already been made. Thanks for the gifts and surprises you arranged for our Mom, Angelica." Victoria wasn't too surprised by the news, though it was far from pleasant. She felt something bad was coming, something that would change her life, but she had hoped it was just a feeling or, at the very least, that the change wouldn't be so sudden. She wouldn't cry or beg Ivan, especially in front of the beautiful, self-assured, and perfectly made-up woman. She quickly realized that Stella had no intention of letting her talk to her husband alone, and Ivan's behavior showed his decision was final. He showed no concern for Ms. Angelica, the woman who had raised him. "How am I going to live on my own now? What will the tenant say? I can't just kick him out like that," Victoria thought. By then, the taxi had arrived. Ivan and Stella gathered up her belongings and took them out of the apartment. Victoria left with Ms. Angelica, who suddenly began screaming and causing a scene. "I told you, let's not waste time. She'll scream like this for a long time. I can't stand the rambling of old people. Just thinking about living in an environment like that makes my hair stand on end," Stella complained, visibly annoyed. Moments later, they stood outside Victoria's apartment. She had a key but rang the bell because she couldn't imagine just walking into someone's home unannounced. The young man who rented her apartment, Elias, opened the door. He looked at her with a puzzled expression, seeing her carrying an elderly woman in several bags. "Good evening, Elias. It's me, I'm sorry, I have nowhere else to go, can you imagine that?" Victoria said tiredly. "Did something happen with your husband?" Come in, don't stand out there, it's windy. Is this your mother? Elias asked, confused, and began carrying things into the apartment. Yes, my mother, Ms. Angelica, and my husband feels more comfortable with another woman. We were just kicked out, Victoria explained, sitting down on the couch. Actually, I had no idea until an hour ago, so I couldn't inform you. I have no other place but here, but I don't want to pressure you to leave. That's not fair. What a story. Your husband behaved terribly. Come in, make yourself at home. I'll think about what I can do. Maybe I can stay with someone for a few days, then find another place to rent, and everything will be fine. No problem at all. Do you need anything else? Elias asked, with genuine concern. The kindness from a stranger moved Victoria to tears. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I didn't want things to turn out this way. If you don't mind, I need to change her and feed her now. Do what you need to do. If you need help, don't hesitate to ask. If I'm not mistaken, you don't have a senior-friendly bathtub. Don't worry, there's a large tub in the bathroom, it can be used for her, he comforted her. After feeding her mother and settling her into the bedroom, Victoria and her tenant sat drinking tea in the kitchen. You know, Elias, I've been thinking. You don't have to leave, you can stay here for half the rent. How does that sound? You'll have your own room, and my mom and I can sleep in the kitchen, it's spacious. As you know, I don't have much money, and I can't rely on my husband for support. I don't even know if I'll receive anything from Ivan. Taking care of my sick mom takes up so much time that I can barely work extra hours, so money will be tight. I think you understand, she said. My mom is gentle, she only yells when someone agitates her, so she won't be a nuisance. Let's do the opposite. You stay in the room, and I'll sleep in the kitchen. I'll buy a folding bed right now. Don't worry, I'll pay the rent as usual, Elias said, without feeling troubled at all. No, that's impossible. You rented this place without knowing the complications, and now you have to share it with 2 others. I can't burden anyone like this. Besides, Ivan might come to his senses. I really want us to have a happy family, she said, smiling lightly, though her tears welled up as she said it. If I were you, I wouldn't cry. That could hurt you. You need health and peace of mind to take care of your mother. As for your husband, maybe he's just young and not ready for the responsibility of family life. And I might be transferred to another city soon, so I'll leave here eventually. So, please stay in the room and rest, and I'll go get a folding bed, the man said, getting ready to go to the store. An hour later, Elias returned with a folding bed, a cake, fruit, and flowers. I'm back, and all these flowers and vitamins are for you. Let's have a little party, he said cheerfully. Is there something to celebrate? Victoria asked, confused. Of course. This is reason enough. Someone just got rid of a bad person. Wishing peace and good health to your mom, and the same for you, he said, and Victoria's eyes filled with tears again. While her own son didn't even look at his adoptive mother, this stranger treated them with kindness beyond expectation. And so, a man and a woman who barely knew each other began living together in the same apartment, with an elderly woman who remembered things sporadically and simply smiled at those around her, not caring if it was her daughter or a stranger. Elias grew attached to the elderly woman, and Victoria tried to help him in any way she could. He would bring home packages of diapers and food for the elderly. Victoria accepted these gifts but was clearly embarrassed. She wasn't used to such generosity and felt uncomfortable accepting them from Elias. Elias, please don't bring us anything else, I'm begging you. You know I'm uncomfortable with it. I already feel terrible for intruding here, and now you're even buying things for me with your own money. I don't know when I can pay you back, she said, ashamed. Come on, Victoria, it's really not much. Ms. Angelica was finding it increasingly difficult to move, and it was getting harder for Victoria to take her out for walks without a wheelchair. She thought about buying one, but when she looked in stores, she realized she couldn't spend that much. She'd always been frugal, and now she tried to save every penny she could. If something went wrong, she had no one to rely on. She didn't want to ask Ivan for help and had too little time to work much. So, the only thing she could do was save as much as possible. She didn't mention this to Elias, as it would be awful if he offered to help her with a big purchase like that. She decided to buy the wheelchair on her own. She planned to find a good quality, second-hand wheelchair, which would be half the price and almost like new. She knew these items were typically used for only a year or two. While searching for a second-hand wheelchair in good condition, Victoria went to a local thrift market, where she quickly found what she needed, a wheelchair that looked almost new, at half the store price. When she returned home, she shared her joy with Elias. Now Ms. Angelica has her own transportation, and we can go anywhere together. We just need to clean it up. Who did you buy it from? Why didn't you tell me? I was thinking of buying one, but I didn't dare. I was afraid you wouldn't accept it. I knew you wouldn't accept it. Sorry, Elias, but I'm not used to relying on others. I have some money and will keep trying to work a little extra. I'm a strong woman, I can manage everything, Victoria said, still thrilled about the great deal she got. You're absolutely right. By the way, I have some news, and I don't know if you'll like it. I'll be leaving here soon. I just got offered a really good job, but it's in another region, he said, a bit sadly. I'm so happy for you. I know you've dreamed of this transfer for a long time. But my mom and I will miss you, Victoria replied, saddened. It was true, she had grown used to Elias's presence, and though she never asked for it, his help always arrived just when she needed it. Elias left to run some errands, and Victoria, after feeding her mother, began cleaning the wheelchair. She lifted the cushion and found a folded piece of paper underneath. It wasn't surprising, as no one knew what a previous owner might have left behind. She unfolded the note and was shocked to find a handwritten message addressed to her, Victoria, the new owner of the wheelchair. The note's content was strange. A completely unfamiliar man wrote. To the new owner, I'm selling this wheelchair because a tragedy happened in my life and my wife's. We had an accident, and I lost my wife. I wish you and your mother happiness and peace. I guess you might have financial difficulties in life, and I want to help, as I am able. Go to the address below, and you'll see a house next to a large old tree. In the hollow of the tree, you'll find something that will help you through tough times. What kind of joke is this? Victoria wondered. It's like a spy game, a large tree, a tree hollow, help for hard times. Actually, this is both scary and intriguing. Why not go and check it out? I don't think someone would be watching just to laugh at me. And even if they were, so what? I'll go see. I won't mention it to Elias, he's leaving soon anyway. It's sad, but what can I do? For him, it'll be a relief. Living with a stranger and her sick mother in his home must have made him sick of us by now. Victoria finished her thoughts and tucked the note into her purse. The next day, she put her foster mother into the new wheelchair and went to the address written in the note. She easily found the old tree and saw the tree hollow. She looked around, reached into the hollow, and found a large bundle inside. She took it, placed it in her bag, and quickly returned home, eager to see what was inside. When she arrived, she immediately opened the bundle to find neatly folded elderly clothing, along with a ribbon-tied envelope. Inside the envelope, there was no note but about $12,000. Victoria counted the money over and over, unable to believe her eyes. This is like a miracle has happened in my life, it's the perfect solution to all my problems. I can stop worrying so much about my mom's treatment and care, I don't need to save every penny anymore, and I can even buy a few essentials for both of us. Who can I thank? Who can I pray for and bless? Victoria thought to herself, feeling overjoyed. A little while later, Elias returned, still needing to pack. "Victoria, I'm leaving now. To be honest, I'll miss you and Ms. Angelica. I'll worry about both of you. Don't lose my number. If there's any problem, call me. I'll always help however I can. Don't worry, Elias, I know we'll be fine. I'm so happy and will soon be even happier. My mom will be alright, and we'll soon be a fully independent family. Don't worry about that. I'll call you, but not to ask for anything, just to see how you're doing," Victoria said with a smile. "Alright, I'll call you too. I'm so glad to see you this happy, Victoria, and I'm sure you'll be very happy. You're a rational, serious woman and a devoted daughter." After their heartfelt talk, they finally parted ways. The next day, Victoria was alone, but she was no longer the scared, lonely young woman. The money she'd received, as if from heaven, didn't make her lose control. She managed it responsibly. She realized there would be no further miracles, and that her life depended on herself. She began the divorce proceedings and filed for alimony from Ivan to support Ms. Angelica. Finally, the court date arrived. She spoke to a neighbor, Kara, asking her to watch over her mother for a few hours. Kara was a wonderful, kind, and understanding woman. Her parents lived far away, so she rarely saw them. She was glad to spend time with Ms. Angelica. At court, Victoria saw her former husband for the first time in a year. He remained silent, appeared anxious, didn't inquire about Ms. Angelica, and barely looked at his ex-wife. But it no longer mattered to her. She had completely removed him from her life and her foster mother's. It was clear he didn't want to pay alimony and even wanted to deny his responsibility as her son. When he ran into Victoria at the building's entrance, her ex-husband angrily said, "Why are you still clinging to me with your sick mother? You put up with it for a year, and now what? Now you want money? This is pathetic. You're not poor, look, you've got a new coat, a fresh haircut, and yet you expect me to believe you're struggling. I have plenty of new things, but by law, you're required to pay alimony, didn't you know?" Victoria replied, walking away with pride. She wondered how she could have loved this man for so many years. Both the love she once had for Ivan and the intense resentment toward him, along with all thoughts of her unfulfilled dreams of a happy family, had become the past. Even before discovering the unexpected treasure, she had erased her ex-husband from her life. The only thing that still worried Victoria was her fear of the future and potential financial issues that might arise one day. But after receiving the gift from the stranger, that fear of the future had disappeared. Her adoptive mother needed many things, and now Victoria could hire massage services, a caregiver for her mother, and more. Eventually, Victoria found a trustworthy caregiver to look after her mother each month, and it was time for her to return to work. She didn't want to return to her old company, firstly, because she'd have to work 2 shifts, and secondly, because Ivan was still working there. Actually, Victoria didn't know if her ex-husband was still working there, but he probably was, and she didn't want to return to a place filled with memories of youthful illusions and heartbreak. Victoria began searching for a new job and soon realized it wasn't easy. Her field had limited demand, her time out of work had been extended, and there weren't many opportunities to learn new things. But when she went for an interview at one of the companies she had found, ready to accept any position, she encountered Elias again. Over the years, they had hardly stayed in touch, only exchanging holiday greetings and knowing little about each other's lives. They only kept each other updated on important events to ensure no one was facing any hardships. Victoria didn't know that Elias had returned to the city after receiving a major promotion. Now he was a top professional at a renowned company. The reunion was warm. Elias immediately sensed that Victoria was urgently looking for a job. "Victoria, it so happens that I need a secretary right now. I'd be very happy if you took the position," Elias said confidently. "But I've never been a secretary. I don't know if I could manage," Victoria replied, feeling uneasy about the offer. I assure you, there's nothing complicated about it. Besides, I promise not to criticize you for any little mistakes, and this job will be far easier than production work, with much more flexibility in working hours. Elias tried to persuade her. Thank you, Elias. You know, I'm still amazed at the luck of renting you the apartment. You helped my mom and me so much, and now you're helping us even more. Victoria began her new job and performed well. She quickly adapted, and soon, thanks to this job and with Elias by her side, who was now her boss, she discovered a strange truth. One day, she noticed a handwritten note by Elias. Suddenly, his handwriting looked oddly familiar. In fact, it wasn't just familiar, it was identical to the handwriting in the note she'd found in the wheelchair she bought for her mother. Of course, Victoria had kept that note as a keepsake. The next day, she brought the note to work and compared it with Elias's handwriting. She didn't need to be an expert to see it was the same. When her boss arrived, Victoria placed the note in front of him, straightforwardly. Oh, Elias laughed, slightly embarrassed. You finally figured it out. But why? Why did you set it up in such a complicated way, with the tree and the note? Victoria asked. I saw that you were struggling, and I knew for certain you wouldn't accept anything if I offered it directly. Anything, no matter how small, made you uncomfortable. And I was moving to another place. So, I came up with that idea, Elias explained, feeling a bit awkward. But I could have chosen a different wheelchair, or not even checked the tree, and anyone could have found that money before me, Victoria continued. In theory, yes, Elias replied with a big smile. But I planned it very carefully, there were no mistakes. In reality, I was watching you. I have to admit that. The wheelchair seller had been informed, and I personally monitored the tree. I'm sorry. And I didn't notice a thing. I didn't know whom to thank. But here, there's something about your wife. Is that true? Victoria asked, becoming serious. Yes, Victoria, it's all true. I was married once. My wife and I were in an accident, and she passed away, leaving me alone. It was a tremendous shock. Heartbroken, I left that city and moved here, where I rented your apartment. It's been a long time now, and it's still just me, alone. But why? Why? Did you decide to help me? And even more, why such a big gift? That's a lot of money. I knew that money would be of use to you and that, in some way, it would save you. And I'll ask you one thing, Victoria, please don't talk about paying it back or anything like that. I don't want to hear it. But I wanted to help you, just you. Why not? You can't imagine how grateful I am to you. Honestly, I wouldn't have accepted this money if you'd handed it to me directly, even though it was essential and saved my mother and me from so much hardship and shame. I had no way of earning money while caring for my sick mother. If my mom needed something, I would have done anything. I would have had to humble myself before my ex-husband and beg him to pay the alimony he's legally obligated to pay each month, even though he only paid sporadically and in very small amounts. Thank you so much, and although you're saying otherwise, I'll try to repay you, maybe not immediately, but perhaps. Enough, I don't want to hear it. Forget it and just live happily. Understood? As your boss, I'm ordering you to forget all of this and focus on your work, Elias said with a firm tone, smiling. Understood, Victoria replied with a smile. Though you're making it hard for me to forget. It turned out that Elias had something to look back on as well. He remembered when a very sweet and happily married young woman had rented him the apartment. And later, he saw her again at his doorstep, this time carrying her sick mother, abandoned by her husband and deeply unhappy. Was it the right time to try to pursue her? No. Any romantic advances would only bother the young mother, and if she accepted, it would be out of desperation. So all Elias decided to do was to help her a little. He also thought that maybe Victoria still had feelings for her ex-husband, maybe hoping they'd reconcile. He understood that was unlikely, but he didn't dare burden her with his feelings. Then he had an opportunity to take a better position elsewhere, and that was the reason for their nearly 3-year separation. This time, Elias also hesitated for a long time before confessing his feelings for Victoria, though now she had found her place in life and was a more independent and confident woman, making their relationship more promising. Elias sensed she was capable of reciprocating his feelings, not out of gratitude, nor to protect her job, but because she might genuinely like him too. Meanwhile, Victoria herself knew that if Elias wanted to help her, it wasn't only out of compassion. Soon enough, Elias decided it was finally time to confess his feelings. Before the weekend, Elias called Victoria into his office. "Victoria, tell me, what time will you go home to relieve the caregiver with Ms. Angelica?" "As usual, at 7 p.m. "Why do you ask?" Victoria asked, surprised. "Very well. I want you to finish your tasks within the next hour, and although it's late, I'd like to take you out to dinner," Elias said suddenly, becoming slightly bashful. "I have a lot of work to do," Victoria replied, hesitating. "Then finish the important tasks, and we'll leave the less urgent ones for next week," he replied, knowing full well that Victoria had already completed all her important work. "All right, Elias, I'll do it," she said and returned to her desk to carry out her boss's request, finishing up very quickly. Sitting in a cozy cafe, they ate and chatted. When Elias suddenly grew nervous, Victoria noticed immediately. Then he said, "Victoria, I've been in love with you since the time we lived together. Ms. Angelica became like a mother to me, I grew so attached to you, and it was very hard to live alone after leaving you." Hearing this, Victoria held her breath. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She took a sip of water to calm her throat and replied, "Elias, I've been waiting for you to say all of this. And I'll tell you one thing. I love you too. I was heartbroken when you left. Our relationship became so close, so trusting, it spoke volumes. I'm glad you started this conversation first, otherwise, it would have taken me a long time to decide." They sat across from each other, and Elias took Victoria's hand. "Victoria, can we be together?" he asked shyly, looking into her eyes. "Of course, what could stop us?" Victoria smiled. Elias got up from the table, pulled her close, and gave her a gentle kiss on the lips. She returned the gesture. Then he whispered in her ear, "Come on, Victoria, we have to get back to our mother, Ms. Angelica." Some time later, Elias and Victoria held a beautiful wedding. Victoria knew that her ex-husband, whom she hadn't heard from in years, had sold his apartment and left without telling anyone where he was going. That was enough for him to lose his status as Ms. Angelica's son, a man without filial duty. And Elias was finally able to become the one to care for and look after Ms. Angelica. From the very first day, the elderly woman called him her son and loved him as if he were her own flesh and blood.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.